Listen to me very carefully right now, because what I am about to tell you will either terrify you or completely reset the trajectory of your entire life. Look at your hands. Look at your body. One day, sooner than you think, you will not have the physical strength to get out of bed and grind for 40 hours a week. The market will look at your gray hair, your slowing reflexes, and your worn-out spine, and it will discard you without a second thought. And on that exact day, you will realize a brutal, horrifying truth: most people do not retire into peace, they retire into absolute, humiliating financial devastation. Let that sink in. You spend 40 years working, sweating, and sacrificing, only to reach 65 and realize that your lifetime of labor leaves you with a pension that barely covers your monthly groceries and medical bills. You are walking directly toward a financial cliff with a blindfold on, trusting a system that was designed to break you. I know this because I started at the absolute bottom of human existence. When I was just an 11-year-old boy, I didn't have a plush office or a laptop. I had a wooden box strapped to my shoulder, walking the blistering streets, shining dirty shoes for pennies. But when you spend months staring at the feet of wealthy men, you learn a terrifying secret about human nature that no business school will ever teach you. I saw men wearing tailored suits and shiny expensive shoes, sitting on my wooden box with legs that wouldn't stop shaking. Their breath was shallow, their eyes were frantic, checking their gold watches every 10 seconds. They looked rich, but they were internally bleeding. They owed the bank, they owed their bosses, they owed the fake image they were desperate to maintain. And then, I saw men with simple, worn-out shoes. They sat down slowly, took a deep breath, and looked at the world with absolute tranquility. They paid me, looked me dead in the eye, and smiled. Why? Because the man in the shiny shoes was dead broke underneath his debt, while the man in the worn shoes owed nothing to anyone. True wealth is not what you show to the world, true wealth is what you own that pays you back while you sleep. Look at the financial reality of the average hard-working person today. Let us take two middle-class individuals, Ottavio and Regina. Both are 55 years old, earning decent salaries, living normal lives. Ottavio trusted the government blindly. He worked 32 long years under a traditional contract, paying into Social Security every single month, assuming that the state would take care of him in his old age. He never sat down with a piece of paper to do the cold, hard math. Regina, on the other hand, was self-employed. She paid the absolute minimum into the state system, knowing it was a sinking ship, but she also failed to build a personal safety net. Now, look at the brutal math that almost no one has the courage to do. The absolute ceiling of state Social Security might look decent on paper, but after taxes, inflation, and administrative cuts, the average retiree gets thrown a pathetic pittance. Let us be ridiculously generous and say Ottavio receives $3,500 a month in state pension. Sounds okay? Think again. At 65, his body starts failing. His health insurance spikes to $1,800 a month, because insurance companies prey on the elderly. His basic rent or maintenance takes another $1,000. That leaves him with a pathetic $300 for food, electricity, clean water, life-saving medications, and clothes. $300 to survive an entire month. That is not living, that is slow, agonizing starvation. That is the financial geology of modern society, a beautiful, glossy surface that hides a hollow, collapsing cavern underneath your feet. And the moment age lands on you, that surface shatters, and you fall into despair. So, how do you break this cycle? How do me, an 80-year-old man who started as a penniless shoeshine boy, live with complete, unshakable peace today? I don't survive off stock market gambling. I don't care if the stock market crashes 50% tomorrow. I don't live off buying low and selling high like a desperate day trader sweating in front of charts. I live off dividends. I live off the unstoppable, continuous river of cash that solid, essential corporations deposit directly into my bank account quarter after quarter, year after year, decade after decade. When you buy a piece of a company that controls the electricity, the clean water, the banking infrastructure, or the sanitation of a country, you are no longer a victim of the economy, you become the landlord of the economy. Every time someone turns on a light switch, opens a water tap, swipes a debit card, or pays an insurance premium, a small fraction of that transaction flows straight into your pocket. People will tell you that investing in stocks is risky for old people. They tell you to hide your money in a bank savings account or lazy fixed income that yields 10% while inflation quietly steals 12% of your purchasing power. That is not safety, that is financial suicide in slow motion. Real safety is owning real assets that society cannot function without. When the global market collapsed in 2008, panic flooded the streets. Wall Street burned, people sold their life savings in sheer terror, and newspapers screamed that the end of the world had arrived. Do you know what I did? I bought more. Not because I was brave, but because people didn't stop drinking water during the crisis. They didn't stop turning on their lights. They didn't stop using basic banking services. The stock prices dropped, but the real cash flow of essential businesses kept pumping money. If you build a portfolio of essential dividend-paying companies layer by layer, sediment by sediment, you create a deep underground river of income that never dries up. You stop worrying about politicians, you stop worrying about stock price swings, and for the first time in your life, you own your time, your dignity, and your freedom. Let's tear down the massive lie that the banking system has fed you for decades. The banking industry has conditioned you to be terrified of the stock market so they can keep your hard-earned money trapped in their own predatory products. They push you into high-fee certificates of deposit, low-yield savings accounts, and fixed-income funds with hidden administration fees that quietly strip away half of your real returns. They call this security. That is not security, that is a calculated transfer of your wealth into the bank's vault. Let's pull back the curtain and look at the brutal mathematics behind what I call lazy fixed income. Suppose a bank manager offers you a financial product yielding 10% a year. You walk out of the branch smiling, thinking you made a brilliant choice. But let's calculate the real numbers that nobody tells you. First, government taxes immediately slash 15 to 22% off your returns. Your net yield plummets to 8.5%. Now, factor in real inflation, the invisible thief that makes groceries, healthcare, and electricity more expensive every single month. If inflation is sitting at 5 or 6%, your actual, real purchasing power gain is a miserable 2 to 3%. And if inflation spikes higher, as it repeatedly does in volatile economies, your real return drops to zero or turns completely negative. You think you are saving money for your golden years, but in reality, you are holding a melting ice cube in your hands while the bank profits off your ignorance. Now, contrast that with the deadly power of smart fixed income paired with essential dividend stocks. Smart fixed income isn't about hiding your money, it's about strategic protection. It means holding inflation-linked government or prime institutional bonds where the principal amount is continuously adjusted to match real inflation, creating a solid shield against economic erosion. It means leveraging bonds with semi-annual interest payouts that function like a guaranteed annuity, dropping predictable cash into your account every 6 months to cover immediate expenses. When you combine this protective shield with the ultimate wealth engine, shares of essential, dividend-paying companies, you become completely unstoppable. Look at how this math works in real life. Suppose Ottavio, at age 45, decides to break free from the traditional path. He sets aside $500 every month to buy shares in bulletproof sectors, electricity grid operators, water sanitation utilities, top-tier commercial banks, and major insurance providers. These are businesses with long-term concession contracts, predictable revenues, and mandatory profit-sharing rules. In his first year, he buys shares that pay a 6% annual dividend yield. If he has 1,000 shares paying $2 each, he gets $2,000 in cold, hard cash. Here is where the magic happens: he does not spend a single cent of those dividends. He immediately reinvests every dollar back into buying more shares. The following year, his share count grows, which means his dividend check grows, which allows him to buy even more shares. It becomes a compounding avalanche of passive income. After 20 years of continuous reinvestment, Ottavio isn't relying on a broken state pension or praying for stock prices to go up. By age 65, his dividend portfolio alone generates $2,000 to $3,000 a month in pure cash flow. Add his basic pension on top, and he lives with absolute dignity, freedom, and power, without ever needing to sell a single share of his underlying wealth. Now, I hear the excuse people love to make, but Barsi, I am already 60 years old. I don't have 20 years to wait. Listen to me clearly, if you are 60 and haven't started, doing nothing is a guaranteed death sentence for your finances. Even if you start late, allocating your capital into high-yield, inflation-protected instruments and essential dividend stocks immediately creates a supplementary cash flow layer that fills the gap between survival and actual comfort. The absolute ideal time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is right now. Look at the stark difference between two people with the exact same net worth of $180,000 at age 55. Person A dumps all of it into a standard bank CD paying 10%. After taxes and inflation, that money yields a pathetic real gain of barely $500 a month, while the core capital sits totally stagnant, losing value every year. Person B divides that exact same capital strategically, 1/3 in high-dividend utility stocks, 1/3 in inflation-linked semi-annual interest bonds, and 1/3 in high-yield guaranteed institutional notes. Person B immediately generates double the monthly income, while the value of their dividend-paying assets grows over time to keep up with rising costs. Same money, completely different strategy, and an entirely different quality of life. That is the power of understanding financial geology over banking illusions. Now we arrive at the third pillar, the one almost no one in the financial world wants to talk about because it doesn't earn a bank manager a commission, it requires you to look into a mirror. Most people treat their cost of living as if it's an unpredictable natural disaster that just happens to them. They complain that rent went up, health insurance skyrocketed, and groceries are out of reach. They act as passive victims of the world around them. But I learned very early on that your cost of living is not an accident, it is a structural decision. Let's talk about a concept that ruins millions of hardworking families: structural income commitment. This is the total sum of money you are forced to pay every single month, whether you have a job, whether you are sick, or whether you are retired. Mortgages, car loans, high condo maintenance fees, private insurance premiums, endless subscriptions, and rolling credit card installments that never seem to disappear. For most middle-class households, this fixed commitment swallows 60 to 80% of their entire income before they even buy a single loaf of bread. Now, imagine what happens when you step into retirement. Your income drops significantly, but your structural commitments do not drop with it. Your rent doesn't care that you turned 65. Your health insurance actually demands more money as you get older. Suddenly, someone who lived paycheck to paycheck on $6,000 a month is now suffocating on $3,000. The floor gives way, and despair sets in. The third pillar is about treating your personal overhead like a harsh geological engineering project. You must dig deep into your monthly expenditures and brutally decide which expenses are structural rocks that keep you grounded, and which ones are useless sand dragging you under. If you are 55 years old and still carrying a mortgage or a financed car loan, paying off those debts must become your absolute, non-negotiable priority before you stop working. Carrying a financed vehicle or high-interest debt into retirement is like jumping into deep water with a massive concrete boulder chained to your ankles. When I was young, my colleagues used to call me stingy. They meant it as a petty insult, but I took it as the highest compliment. While they were taking out loans to buy new cars every 2 years and spending their paychecks dining at lavish restaurants to impress people they didn't even like, I was quietly taking every spare dollar and purchasing shares in core energy and utility companies. 40 years later, those same colleagues are stressed, desperate, and terrified of losing their jobs, while I sit back with complete peace, living entirely off the massive stream of passive dividends generated by those decisions. It's not about living like a pauper or starving yourself. It is about choosing freedom over fake status. Every single unnecessary recurring expense you cut today is a layer of solid granite you place beneath your feet for tomorrow. If you eliminate your fixed obligations before you retire, your monthly dividend requirement drops drastically, giving you instant breathing space and ultimate control over your life. Control your overhead, or your overhead will ruthlessly control you. Now, pay close attention, because even if you build all 3 pillars, there are 5 fatal mistakes that can completely destroy your foundation from the inside out. First, selling good stocks in a panic during a market crisis. When the market drops 40%, amateurs panic and sell at a bottom, locking in their losses forever. Every time you sell out of fear, you tear a layer of rock from your own base. The strong companies always recover, and their dividends keep flowing. Second, confusing gross returns with real returns. Never fall for a banker telling you a product yields 12% without asking what remains after taxes and inflation. Gross yield is an accounting illusion, real yield after inflation is the only truth that puts food on your table. Third, financing the lifestyle of your adult children. This is the hidden sinkhole that drains thousands of seniors. Taking your life savings to pay off credit cards, fund luxury cars, or subsidize rent for grown adult children who should be building their own foundation is not generosity, it is financial suicide. Fourth, putting all your money into a single rental property. Real estate is rigid, non-liquid, and fragile. When a tenant defaults or repairs hit, your cash flow instantly dies, and you cannot sell half a living room to buy groceries. Fifth, waiting until retirement day to get organized. You must organize your life at least 3 years before you stop working. Waiting until the day your paycheck stops puts you into immediate panic mode. Look at the true return of this strategy. The greatest dividend the 3 pillars produce isn't listed on a bank statement or a stockbroker's spreadsheet. It is the dividend of absolute, uninterrupted sleep. I sleep soundly every single night because my survival does not depend on a politician, a single employer, or the daily mood of Wall Street. True peace in old age isn't about having millions to show off, it is about having a wide, unshakable margin between what comes in and what goes out. I started life as an 11-year-old shoeshine boy on the dusty pavement, with no wealth, no inheritance, and no shortcuts. But I learned that respecting every single coin and planting it in essential, dividend-paying businesses is how you build a fortress that no economic storm can destroy. Now the choice is entirely yours. Take a sheet of paper tonight and write down 3 simple numbers. First, your real net income today. Second, your mandatory monthly fixed expenses. Third, the actual, unembellished amount you expect from your pension. Look at the gap between those numbers. That gap is the empty plot of land you need to start filling with real, dividend-paying rock starting right now. Do not wait for tomorrow, because age will not wait for you.